leaving a job can be a big decision. And I think you and I have actually both been really nimble and flexible in our careers. We've made the call to leave or to go look for something new for, I really think, all sorts of reasons. Hey, everyone. Welcome to The Potential. My name is Shahrzad, and I have been obsessed with personal growth and career growth for the last 20 plus years.
And I'm Ko, and I also have 2 decades of experience, and I've been growing in my design career, learning about different aspects of design from fashion graphic to UX. And now as a design executive, I want to share a lot of the things that I've learned.
First question for me to you is, what inspires you to start looking for that new job?
I think for me, it's a lot of different reasons. And lately I heard a phrase like people leave their managers, not their job or something like that. And I think that's definitely one of it. I definitely had bad, terrible bosses. We can talk about that later too, but I've left for that. I left because I wasn't being paid fairly. And I think every time I've left a company and went to another one, I've gotten a raise.
Wait, can I ask a follow-up question about that?
Yeah.
So I've definitely had the experience of not being paid fairly. And for me, here was the situation. And this has happened to me 3 times in my career where I would be working a job and I'd been there for maybe a year, not even that long. And then I would talk to someone who was 100% of these 3 times a male coworker, and we would connect, we'd become friends, and then he would tell me what his salary was. And every time it was more than what I was making. And then I would, in all 3 of these situations, I would go to my manager and I'd say, hey, what's going on with this? Because I think we're doing the same work, but this person makes more than me. And I got crazy answers like, well, he negotiated better. Not okay. Another one was, well, people who are coming in now are just making more, and that's just how that is. And then the 3rd time it was like, this is insubordination. You shouldn't be talking about each other's salaries with each other. And the most egregious time, which is ridiculous, right? We are both people leaders and executives right now, and that's a ridiculous thing to say, in my opinion.
Just one comment. The only people that benefit from people not talking about their salary with their colleagues and peers is the company. I think everybody at every level should be talking to their peers and colleagues about their salary and what they make. I always do, because I think people in America value money, and they equate the worth or value of someone based on their salary, which is not true. It's completely irrelevant. So yeah, I had to interject for a second there.
Totally. And I actually think that the trend is moving towards companies, especially in the Bay Area, needing to be transparent about salaries. I don't know if you saw, but new job postings in California have to have the pay ranges listed on the job listing, which is really refreshing. But yeah, back to my story, the worst part, the worst time that I had this experience, and I did leave the job immediately after this happened, was someone who was a level below me, who was a male who had gotten hired after me, a level below me, was making more than me. And it didn't seem like the company was interested in correcting it. And in fact, they kind of negged me. They were like, well, maybe you need to work harder and do more. Meanwhile, all of my performance reviews were, you're doing an amazing job, keep it up. So it was just really, really disappointing. And I decided to leave. I think that's a perfectly valid reason to leave.
Yeah, maybe more than that money, it just speaks to the value of that company that you were at, and that all of that permeates, I'm sure, into everything else. And maybe that was one part of it, or that manifestation of the values of that company.
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, to me, the problem with the company was not that they wanted to be unfair. They were good people. I still think fondly of that job, but the company was pretty cash strapped. And rather than take a systematic approach to thinking about how that was going to show up in their actions, they ended up just penalizing people in these kind of one-off ways that ended up being really toxic. So I think it was a blind spot that they had as a company that was just really disappointing. But I don't think it was ill-intentioned, and I don't think it was the company trying to screw people out of what they deserve. That's my take on it, having been there.
Yeah, and some of the issues that I've had in the companies too is because it's unequal, and the policies of that company prevent you from giving you the increased salary, because it could be a significant bump. And in my case, completely agree that the pay gap needs to be fixed. and it's atrocious. In my case, I had a similar situation where I'm a male, but all of my colleagues were getting paid, I would say 60% more.
What?
Really similar work. I was like, excuse me?
How?
Okay,
How did that happen?
I don't know whose fault it is. Partly my fault. So when I got my very first job and they gave me an offer, this is out of college. I was talking to Japanese parents. I was like, hey, should I negotiate the salary because it doesn't seem that high? And their response was, you should be thankful that a company is giving you an opportunity to do something that you love to do, which is design. Why would you negotiate that salary? You should be thanking them. And I was like, okay, that's a good point. And then so I didn't negotiate the salary. It was very, very low. Let's just say it's very, very low. And I got the job. I really liked the job a lot, actually. And then when I went to the next job, they asked me what I made, and I gave them that number. And then they're like, well, why don't we give you 10% above that? So it goes up to that, and I work there. And every year, I mean, typical raise is like 3 to 5% a year, right? So it goes up like a little bit, and a little bit. And then when I left the company, I was talking to my coworkers about what I had been making when we were all doing sort of similar work. And I told them what I made, and they were shocked. They were like, what? Because they were getting, for the similar work, they were getting paid 60% more. Now I was like, what? It blew my mind. It's like almost twice as much money. So then that trickled into the third job. So that third job was also like, hey, why don't we just pay you what you've been getting paid and just like a tiny bit more? And I'm like, okay, that sounds fine. And then someone told me, hey, you're actually worth, and this is the part where I know now you should be talking to everybody and all of your colleagues and all of your peers, because I was essentially getting paid half of what I was worth. So when I found that out, I was really shocked because with the level of work I was doing and quality of work I was doing. And then so that fourth job, when they asked me for my range, I just doubled the current salary that I was making, which in my mind was absurd. But I doubled it, and then their response was, oh, great, that's we didn't want you to be out of that range, and that's exactly the range that we're looking for. And I was like, excuse me, I just doubled my ask, and then they said yes. And then I don't blame the business exactly, because they're trying to like cut expenses, and then salary is like super expensive. I don't think it's fair. Maybe I do blame the company. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I think it's kind of like a little bit gray for me, but I understand the company. Maybe it is like, I understand the company trying to save money. At the same time, yeah, you're paying me half of what everybody else gets paid.
Yeah.
And then so when I told the company, hey, I'm going to go this other company, they were like, oh, what are they paying you? Like we'll match that basically. And I was like,
are you serious?
You could have been paying me that same amount, or like that double my salary amount. Mm-mm. And you knew I was worth that, but you chose not.
Too little, too late. Too little, too late.
I already accepted that other job anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so I think when we were both early career and like mid-career, there weren't that many transparent tools available online for what other people were making. There just weren't. And I remember the moment that I made, because I had a similar sort of like 2x salary jump moment. And the moment that I did that was I just finished grad school, and huge shout out to my grad school colleagues who we started a spreadsheet of what offers we were getting so that everyone could just see the numbers and just kind of calibrate to, am I getting offers that are fair right now? And having that spreadsheet made me feel confident going into my interviews out of grad school, being like, well, this is the range I expect, because this is the range all my grad school classmates are getting, and I expect it to be in this range. And I had a couple companies be like, okay, fine. And then a couple who were lowballing me the second I came back and was like, no, this is the range. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess we can do that. And I ended up, because of that grad school spreadsheet, making a 2x salary jump. And if I hadn't had that, I would have been in the same boat. I would have just kept going incrementally more and not really knowing what I could ask for and what was fair. And so I would say for today's designers, man, we are all so lucky to have more tools online that just share salary ranges so that we know what to expect, because like 10, 15 years ago, we just did not have that available to us. So I really wonder, Ko, how many people had the same kind of experience that we had of having that moment of just being like, are you serious? For the last like X number of years, I've been massively underpaid and no one told me.
I'm never going to forget it. But I actually, on the other side of it, coming to where I'm at in my career now, I do check out all those sites and talk to colleagues and friends and stuff. I found that you can actually break through that range too. So I think in a couple of the jobs, I was getting paid more than what the highest on that site was, because it's not a comprehensive set of data.
Yeah.
And the only reason I was able to do that was because I would talk to my peers and colleagues about what they're making, and then talking to the company, and then negotiating sort of like the things that I want. It's just showing the value that what you're worth.
I agree. I'd also say that there's a dark side to this, which is every once in a while, there's been someone I've worked with or a more junior designer who's been like, well, I should be being paid X amount because, you know, I've seen online that this is the range. And the challenge there is that because those numbers are self-reported, some of them are total comp, some of them include bonuses or starting bonuses, annual bonuses, stock grants, etc. And so there's been a couple pretty awkward conversations I had with people when I was hiring where they expected the lowest point for the salary range to be way above what it actually was. And I had to talk to them and be like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be transparent with you. This is the range that we have. What you're shooting for is way outside that range. If you can find that, I think you should, because that's amazing for you. But realistically, here's what I think is happening. I think that the numbers you're looking at are some sort of consolidation of kind of like total compensation and not just the base salary. And I think the challenge there is I'm willing to be open with people and have that conversation. I think there are plenty of hiring managers out there who would just be like, oh, that's out of our range. Sorry, see ya. So it's a tricky balance, I think, for everyone. So it's worth kind of flagging that, I think, to just be aware that those numbers that are out there are both sometimes too low and sometimes too high.
Yeah. I know the topic we want to talk about is when to quit a job, but just one comment, really quick comment there about that negotiation. I think not giving a range, sort of understanding their range, ask them what their range is first, I think is better. And then to see if it fits in yours.
Always.
And then negotiating after you've passed through the interview process has worked out. Where at that point, even if you say like, hey, this is my new range, I doubt that they'll just drop you that fast because it takes so long to find people.
Yeah. And also like the conversation to have there is, hey, now that I've learned more about what the responsibilities of this role are and what the scope of impact is, I need to revisit the compensation. That is a totally normal thing to say in negotiations. So yeah, to your point, it doesn't stop at that first conversation.
So related to the compensation too, like the total comp stuff, that's actually one of the reasons that I was explaining to my friend that why he should leave a job, because he got stock options at a startup as part of that comp package. And when he was offered the stock options, you have to calculate, they're going to offer you less salary potentially. And so you have to calculate what you're missing out on. So for example, if you could have taken a job that's $100K a year, except you're getting paid $50K plus $50K of options, then you're missing out on that $50K of cash. And that those stock options, they need to explode and exponentially be worth a lot more in the time that you're there. Because essentially you're giving up $50,000 worth of cash to work at that company. So again, this goes back to the money thing. Calculating it out and talking to my friend, I told him that, hey, unless that company is worth $1 billion in 4 years, you're not getting that money back because the percentage of the company that you're getting is so tiny, and the stocks that you're getting is so tiny that, like, in 4 years, the question was like, do you think that company is going to be $1 billion? And his answer is like, no way. So a month later, he'd already left. Maybe like a few weeks later, he left the company for another one where he was getting paid that value up front with cash and grants and things like that. So things to think about is like a little bit of the math stuff, because you don't want to be giving money to that company necessarily to work there.
Yeah, I'd say from our conversation so far, it sounds like the only thing we care about is money when we're leaving a job. So I just want to call out that is not true. And actually,
I don't give a shit about money either.
I think for me, the kind of first trigger of what inspires me to think that maybe it's time to leave is that I get bored. So it's like two things for me. One is I feel bored and I look around and there's just no more challenges. And that happens. I know it sounds crazy, but it really does happen where you look around and you're like, hey, what's left? And you should talk to your manager and you should take initiative. But often I have hit a wall where there's just nothing left. And I don't mean in terms of promotions. I mean literally in terms of just things that are interesting for me to push myself on. Like promotions, whatever. I've always treated that as it comes because you do great work. But for me, that growth and the challenges are what's important. So when that's gone, I'm 1 foot out the door. Like I have to start looking because I can't just, like, what is the point? And then the other thing is if I feel bad about myself, and this is a weird one. And so I was going to say there are times in a company's trajectory where maybe your manager has changed or maybe the company culture has changed, you know, if they're really cash strapped and they're just trying to squeeze everyone for more work, or if a new person comes in who's changing the way that people are treated. There are just times when your work starts to make you feel really bad about yourself. And that to me is another flag where I'm like, oh, something is wrong because this is starting to impact my confidence. And if something is impacting my confidence, I'm going to try and fix it. And if I can't fix it, I'm 1 foot out the door then too. Has anything like that come up for you around kind of the flags that you look for knowing that maybe you need to start looking?
Yeah, you know, as you mentioned promotion, there was an incident for me where the expected promotion didn't happen. So I'll give it, just like paint this picture basically. So I was on a team and I had already had a lot of experience at that point, and my manager left the team, and to fill that void, and with my colleagues and peers, so the logical step was to put me in there because I'd down leveled to take that role because it was interesting, and an expectation from everybody was that I get put in that role. I didn't get put into that role. The head director put a different person into that role that had zero experience in product development. I mean, absolutely zero. He didn't know what any of the terms, any of the processes were. And to me, it seemed like a lot of, I don't want to say racism, but a lot of it had to do with, are we going to touch on this topic? I don't know.
Oh, wait, I have a way to say it. What happens a lot of times is people will put someone like them into a position. And that's so common. And sometimes it manifests in ways that are really racist. Sometimes it manifests in ways where it's just, you know, this person was less effective for this role than someone else who should have been in that role. But I think the extent to which I want someone like me to do this, like that is variable in range. It can be a little bit mild. Like, you know, for me, I'll tell you what my bias is. I want people who are growth-minded and growth-oriented. That's people like me. Yes, it's a little bit of a bias, but that's where I sit with it, and I'm aware of it. The worse that bias gets, in my opinion, is I want someone who looks like me and talks like me, and we share common experiences. It can go so deep, that sense of someone like me. So I feel like that's what happened to you. It was on the harmful end of someone like me.
And the harmful description stuff are things that's irrelevant to the job. So the things that you're talking about, like open-minded and growthness, like you want people like that because they are going to excel at the job and they tend to be better people to hire. But the stuff like race or like that they're male, the color of their skin, like none of that stuff matters. And when those things supersede everything else and they get put in place, when that director told me that that's what the move was going to be, literally 5 minutes later, no joke, literally 5 minutes later, I'm on the job board. I like the company, so I'm just like, what other companies or what other teams can I hop on over to? And I was out. There's a few things like the value of that team. I didn't respect that director. I couldn't report to this person. Didn't know anything.
Yeah, like what was the point of reporting to this person, right? And I think that speaks to the how do you know when to leave? If you're not going to learn something from the person who is going to be your manager or the people you're going to be working closely with. There was actually this one experience I had. One of the topics we wanted to talk on was like, how do you know what the right next job is? How do you know what to go to? And I had this experience of interviewing for a job and I was really excited about it. It seemed like I could really have an impact. And, in general, I like to go somewhere because I want to be there, not because I'm trying to get away from the place that I am. I think trying to run away from the place you are is likely to end you up in a worse situation than going towards something you're excited about. So I was trying to go towards something I was excited about. I was interviewing about this job, and then they put a new hiring manager in place while I was in the interview process. And I met this person in person and had an interview, and I was like, okay, this person is 10 years younger than me, which is totally fine. Like, let's not, be ageist about things. But this person was 10 years younger than me, and they proceeded to explain the basics of design to me during the interview process, where I was like, oh God, you don't understand this, and this is new to you. So you're explaining design process to me as part of our interview. Ooh, I got to get out of here. If you're just figuring this out right now, I don't think that you managing me is going to be good for either of us.
No.
And so that was, I thought the role seemed cool, but as I got closer to it, I was like, nope, this is not something I want to go toward.
I have some thoughts there too, but I do want to make a comment that I think you can run away from things. I heard
really? Tell me more about that.
Like,
why?
Like you shouldn't run away. I don't think you should grit it out in like a toxic environment, for example. That's very extreme, but like in my case where I had this situation where the manager came in that didn't deserve to be there, I'm like running away, right? I'm like, I'm out. This is like crazy.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, I think you make a good point. If something is unacceptable, yeah, you got to get away from that. That's not okay. I mean, I had a coworker once who had left her previous job because there was a sexual harassment issue. Yeah, you got to run away from that. There are some things that just aren't okay. Like, just get out of there. So yeah, you're right.
And when you said that phrase about like don't run away, there's like a underlying. Is it more about like why you should stay instead of running away? Like you should work within that company and try to fix it yourself because it'll help you grow. So is that the thought behind it, or what's the thought?
It's more of like the things that you try to run away from, I think, will often find you again. I think we kind of take our problems with us everywhere we go. And so for me, if I'm having an issue at a place that I am, so I had a job where I really loved it, but things changed and I didn't feel like I was able to be as effective. So I thought about leaving. I looked around a little bit and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to stay and see if I can learn something from this. This isn't great, but I think that there's something I can learn here so that this doesn't happen to me again. So I spent some time really trying to resolve the issue. Okay, it doesn't feel like I'm being effective. What skills do I not have that I could learn? Who are the people I might need to connect with differently? What changed in the last 6 months or a year that's put me in this situation? And I ended up kind of finding a lot of things that I was able to fix, and then a couple things that I really wasn't able to change. And so I decided to leave ultimately. But that period of not just being like, this is frustrating, I'm out, was really good for me because I learned how to resolve some things that had been happening to me in job after job, where I just kind of hit a wall or like a relationship wasn't turning into something that was as productive of a collaboration. And I got through that. And now it's made all my jobs since then better. So yeah, I think there's a sense of like, there's some things that are just unacceptable, get out of there. But there are some things where it's maybe frustrating, but in a way that you could still get something out of. Maybe I'm being idealistic, but
no, I think I think you have a great point. The things that I'm hearing, it's not about running away. I mean, we are talking about leaving a company, but the things that you described on why you should stay and try to work it out are things about like internal or the immediate environment that you have control over that you can try to fix and then work with. And then the situation that your friend went through or that I went through was more external, that I didn't have very much control or very, very little control, and that I couldn't fix or change on my own. When you don't have that control to do something about it, maybe is when you start to think about leaving. And then if you do have the control and you do have that power, then maybe you sticking it out and working through it will help you grow and become better.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the other thing that we actually haven't talked about that plays into things, I'm curious if this plays into things for you, is what's happening in the job market, right? Because sometimes it's like, oh, this is a great time to find a new job, or this is a terrible time to find a new job. Does that play into it for you? Because for me, I've mostly just ignored that.
Yeah, I've ignored it. It's usually a personal situation that gets me.
Yeah.
Like, even if the economy is bad out there, it might take a little longer maybe to find the job that you want to take on next. But yeah, I think it's always been kind of a personal situation more than a external.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that is that we're both so growth oriented. Like, what does the economy have to do with my desire to grow and learn? Well, some, but not everything.
Yeah, that's true. I do have other reasons to leave a job.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
When you get pulled away and it's just a better opportunity. So I had that happen a couple of times. Well, I was very fortunate. It only happened later on in my career, but people reach out and say, hey, we would like you to join our team, and we will give you more money, and we will give you more responsibility and more growth opportunities and more ways to learn. So it's just like, it checks off all the boxes. That's pulled me away from the current place I was at. Has that happened to you at all, where you get recruited away from something?
It has, yeah. There's been a couple times where I wasn't really looking, but then there's actually a couple of recruiters I know and I really like, and I listen when they reach out because we've worked together before, we know each other. And it definitely happened. Actually, the last job change I made was a recruiter I really liked being like, look, I think this could be really cool for you. If you want to talk, let me know. And yeah, it was a good experience.
Oh, one comment about that too. There are recruiters that I've known for 20 years.
Wow.
And the recruiters go from different place to different place too. But because it's such a small industry, and the recruiters, design recruiters especially, is part of our industry, that the relationships you have with them, they do last decades. And they're not just there to just like pulling people at that specific company or anything like that. I think they are your allies. They are, I think, one of our biggest allies, because they understand design, and they're going to be moving to different companies and trying to recruit. And if you get to know them and they get to know you, then they know that you might be a good fit at some other place that they go to. I really find a lot of inspiration talking to recruiters and getting to know them, again, to know them better.
You know, I feel like we could go on this topic for another 40 minutes. There's so much here to talk about. So maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point, sort of revisit all the things we didn't talk about. But it's been a fun conversation.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. And I thought of one that we could talk about in addition too, is maybe about how managers can try to prevent people from leaving the team. So we talked about
why. Really good idea.
There's all these reasons that I leave, but as managers, we can try to prevent people from leaving and have a better experience on your team. So we could talk about that next time.
Great topic. If y'all want to hear about that, drop us a comment. Let us know. We're happy to take requests.
And if you liked what you heard today, please, I think it's a like button. That might be better than a subscribe.
It's one of those buttons. Like, subscribe, hit one of them.
If you listen to all the way through, you're probably already subscribing and stuff. But I think it helps more people access the videos. We don't know exactly how you do.
Something about an algorithm. Thanks for listening, y'all. Happy to have you here. And catch you soon.